The Watchers. In the time before memory, when the world was young and the boundaries between realms were thin as morning mist, giants walked among mortals. They were called the Nephilim, the Watchers, the Guards, beings of immense stature, whose heads brushed the clouds and whose footsteps carved valleys into the earth. Kyle was the last of his kind to remain faithful to the ancient compact. Standing 30 cubits tall, with eyes like burning amber and hair that flowed like silver rivers, he had watched over the great civilizations for 3 millennia. From his station atop Mount Hermon, he could see across all the lands, the gleaming pyramids of Egypt rising from golden sands, the terraced gardens of Babylon reaching toward heaven, the mighty cities of the Indus Valley spreading along their sacred river, and the mysterious stone circles of the distant northern lands. For generations beyond counting, the gods had maintained the balance. They were the shepherds of knowledge, teaching mortals the arts of agriculture, astronomy, and metallurgy. They were the keepers of peace, preventing wars that would consume entire peoples. They were the guardians against the darker things that lurked in the spaces between worlds. But now, as Kale stood, watching the sunset paint the world in shades of blood and gold, he felt the weight of a terrible decision pressing upon his ancient heart. The great corruption. It had begun subtly, as corruption always does. First, his brother Watchers had grown too fond of mortal pleasures. They took human wives, begetting offspring that inherited their supernatural strength, but not their wisdom. Hybrid giants consumed by rage and hunger. Then came the teaching of forbidden knowledge, the secrets of war, the forging of weapons that could kill the immortal, the dark arts that bent reality to mortal will. Azazel had taught them to make swords and shields, armor and weapons of war. Semyaza had revealed the secrets of sorcery and divination. Others shared the mysteries of the stars, teaching mortals to read omens and predict the future in ways that disrupted the natural order. What was meant to guide and protect had become tools of domination and destruction. The great cities that had once been jewels of civilization now festered with corruption. In Babylon, priest-kings used forbidden knowledge to enslave entire populations, building their towers of pride with blood and suffering. In Egypt, the pharaohs commanded armies of the dead, perverting the sacred mysteries of life and death. In the Indus Valley, warrior castes wielded weapons that could split mountains, turning their fertile lands into wastelands. Across the northern lands, stone circles hummed with dark energy as druids performed rituals that tore holes in the fabric of reality itself. The hybrid offspring of the fallen Watchers roamed the earth as tyrants and monsters, their supernatural strength making them nearly invincible to mortal resistance. They devoured entire harvests, enslaved populations, and bred violence wherever they went. The earth itself groaned under the weight of their sins, and the very elements began to rebel. The divine judgment. On the night of the convergence, when 7 stars aligned in a pattern that would not repeat for another age, Kyle felt the presence descend upon the mountain. It was not a being that could be seen or touched, but a consciousness vast and terrible, ancient beyond the counting of years. Kyle, last of the faithful. The voice resonated not in his ears, but in the very essence of his being. Your brothers have broken the ancient covenant. They have mingled what should remain separate, taught what should remain hidden, and loved what they were meant only to guard. The giant knelt, his massive frame humbling itself before the presence. I have remained true to the compact, Lord of Hosts. I have not taken human wives. I have not taught forbidden arts. I have sought only to protect and guide. This I know, faithful guardian. But the time of watching is ended. The corruption spreads like poison through water. It cannot be contained, only purged. Your brothers must be bound, their offspring destroyed, and their influence removed from the earth. Chael's heart, ancient and vast as it was, filled with sorrow. And the mortals, Lord? What of those who are innocent? Few remain untouched by the corruption. The civilizations your kind helped build have become monuments to pride and cruelty. They must fall, that the earth might heal and begin anew. The presence pressed closer, and Chael felt the terrible weight of coming judgment. You alone are offered a choice, faithful one. Ascend with us to the higher realms, leaving this world to its fate, or remain and perish with those you have guarded so long. The Great Collapse. Chael's choice was agony incarnate. For 3 days and 3 nights, he wrestled with the decision while the world below began its death throes. The other watchers were bound in chains of starlight and cast into prison dimensions between the worlds. Their hybrid children were hunted down by armies of angels, creatures of pure light that moved like lightning across the earth. But it was not heavenly wrath alone that brought down the great civilizations. As the guards were removed from their posts, the delicate balance they had maintained for millennia collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. The climate began to shift violently as the weather giants were no longer there to moderate the winds and rains. Droughts struck the fertile river valleys, while unprecedented floods swept across other regions. The Sahara, once green and verdant, began its transformation into endless desert. The great ice sheets began to melt, causing sea levels to rise and swallow coastal cities. In Egypt, without the steady guidance of the Watchers, the pharaoh's abuse of forbidden knowledge reached its peak. They attempted to bind death itself to their will, causing a plague of unnatural disasters. The Nile ran red as blood, the sky rained fire, and darkness covered the land for days. The great libraries of Alexandria burned not from human torches, but from spontaneous fires, caused by reality-warping experiments gone wrong. Babylon's hanging gardens withered as the earth itself rejected the unnatural methods used to create them. The Tower of Babel, reaching toward heaven with stones held together by sorcery and mortal sacrifice, cracked and fell in a single night. As it collapsed, it released energies that scattered the population and confused their tongues, fracturing their unified language into 1,000 different dialects. The Indus Valley civilization found their mighty cities undermined by the very weapons they had forged. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were destroyed not by invaders, but by experimental weapons that turned sand to glass and stone to dust. Archaeological evidence would later show vitrification and radiation signatures that future scientists would struggle to explain. In the distant north, the stone circles that had served as focus points for druidic power became unstable without the Watcher's moderating influence. Some exploded in columns of fire that could be seen from 100 miles away. Others collapsed into dimensional rifts, swallowing entire regions into otherworldly voids. The Last Watch. On the final night, as the last of the great cities burned in the distance and the screams of the dying carried on unnatural winds, Chael made his choice. He could not abandon those few mortals who remained innocent, the children who had not yet been corrupted, the simple folk who had never sought forbidden knowledge or power. "I choose to remain," he whispered to the presence that waited for his answer. "If they must face the darkness, let them not face it alone." The presence was silent for a long moment, and Chael felt something that might have been divine sorrow. "Then you shall share their fate, faithful guardian," But know this, your sacrifice will not be forgotten. In the darkness that comes, you shall be a light. In the new age that will eventually dawn, your vigil will be remembered. The presence began to withdraw, but its final words echoed through eternity. Sleep now, last of the gods. Sleep until the world has healed, and mortals are ready once again for guidance from above. When the time of watching returns, you shall wake. Kale felt his consciousness fading as the divine power left the world. Around him, the last of the great civilizations crumbled into dust. The Bronze Age was ending in fire and blood, and the Dark Age was beginning. But even as he slept, bound in caverns deep beneath the earth, Kale's influence lingered. The few survivors of the Great Collapse carried with them fragments of the old knowledge, not the forbidden arts that had corrupted their ancestors, but the simple wisdom of agriculture, healing, and craftsmanship. They carried stories too, legends of giants who had once walked among them, some as protectors and some as destroyers. These stories would echo through the millennia. The Greeks would tell of Titans and their war with the gods. The Norse would sing of Jötnar, giants from the realm of ice and storm. The Hebrews would record the Nephilim, the mighty men of old, sons of God who had taken human wives. Every culture would remember in their own way the time when giants walked the earth and the ancient world ended in catastrophe. As centuries passed into millennia, the earth slowly healed. New civilizations arose from the ashes of the old, more humble perhaps, but also more resilient. They built their cities smaller, their towers lower, their pride more tempered by wisdom earned through suffering. And deep beneath Mount Hermon, Kale slept on, waiting for the day when the world would be ready for the gods to return, waiting for the time when the watches could be restored, the balance re-established, and the covenant between heaven and earth renewed. For the faithful guardian knew that every ending is also a beginning, and every dark age is followed by a dawn. The giants would walk the earth again, but when they did, it would be as protectors, not corruptors, as servants of the light, not masters of the dark. The last watch had ended. The next had yet to begin. Remember to smash that like